post-franchise tag deadline. Guys still on the market. Kirk Cousins, that top quarterback domino that really needs to fall before the others go. Baker Mayfield on that list at 5. Got some defensive players at 2 through 4 with Jones, Hunt, and Wilkins. And flipping to the other side of the ball. Now, Leonard Williams and Kendall Fuller rounding out the top 10. It's time for the Easy Choice presented by Geico. We're going to try to make this easy and play a little game. Brady Quinn here on the desk with us, and of course Bryant McFadden joining us from home. All right, we love playing matchmaker when it comes to friends, right?
You do?
Yes, you want to set people up, make them happy.
Okay.
No?
Sure.
Okay.
Whatever
well,
you say. It feels like a Valentine's Day game. Are we a little late on this?
Well, that's
St. Patrick's Day is coming up. What about like a drinking buddy? Maybe that's what this is?
Okay, we can go with drinking buddies. Matchmaker, drinking buddy. We're going to try to match these free agents with NFL teams. Drinking buddies. We can do that instead of love, but, you know, I'm all about the love up here. We're going to start off with Kirk Cousins. So, yes, he's coming off that torn Achilles, and, of course, he's turning 36 in August, so the age is getting a little bit up there, but, of course, he's proved himself over and over and over again. So, Brady, your drinking buddy, matchmaker, which team?
Okay, now that we're starting off this way, let me go back to the love concept here.
That's
and let's do this, because if the Minnesota Vikings loved Kirk Cousins, you know what they would have done before last season? They would have given him an extension then. Didn't quite work out. They broke off talks. Kirk Cousins didn't want it to be a distraction during the season. He gets hurt, right? Tears his Achilles. He's now rehabbing back from that. So one would think the easy answer to play matchmaker here is the Minnesota Vikings, right? His family's there. We know he's a family guy. He played phenomenal last season before he got hurt. The problem is it takes 2 to tango. And you need to find that team that's really loving, dying for, you know, the need for a quarterback. You know who that team is?
Do tell.
The Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
Arthur Blank, when an owner comes out publicly and says, hey, man, we got to fix this. We got to find our quarterback. When the head coach, the new head coach, comes out and says, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the quarterback play last year, you know that's a team that's desperate for a new quarterback. And there's no one who's proved that, hey, they're willing to pay. Go look at Matt Ryan's contracts throughout the course of the years with Arthur Blank. He's not cheap. He's willing to pay his quarterback. They have weapons there. Their new offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, runs the same system that Kirk Cousins has been running with Kevin O'Connell up with the Minnesota Vikings. And, oh, yeah, Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins date back to their time with Washington. So there is some familiarity there. So I'm going to play matchmaker with Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons, because you know Kirk Cousins wants to take that team, have them pay a boatload of money and go to the bank.
If they were to get Kirk Cousins, could they win that division?
I think so. I mean, obviously, Tampa Bay would be the next team they'd be competing with, and New Orleans as well. But I think it would put them squarely in the mix of one of those teams that didn't make it this past year and could be one of those new teams that does make the playoffs next year.
All right. BMAC, this next one is for you. Now, we're too old to have dealt with social media during dating days, but you best believe cryptic messages would have been sent. That's exactly what Chris Jones is toying with right now. He responded back to a post suggesting that he would consider signing with AFC West rivals, the Las Vegas Raiders, with that handshake. I can't do it myself. The handshake emoji. There is drama here. BMAC, which team are you matching Jones with?
I'm matching Jones back with the Kansas City Chiefs. I understand he's playing around a little bit, which makes sense because, of course, he's trying to get every dollar that's there available for him. But I don't see Chris Jones leaving Kansas City, and here's why. I think Chris Jones is the second most important player to their team, right behind Pat Mahomes. And when you look at what he meant to their Super Bowl run, especially in the Super Bowl game, there were like 3 plays where he basically stopped a touchdown from happening because of his ability to put pressure on Brock Purdy, because if Brock Purdy had time, it's best to say those would have been completed touchdown passes. But Chris Jones has been an outstanding player for their organization. He's played some of his best football in the more critical moments of the season, when you talk about the postseason and playing in the Super Bowls. And when you factor in understanding and knowing where their defense has trended, being able to put the team on their backs and be able to win ball games, not getting a lot from their offense, is led by the production of Chris Jones. So, yes, there are going to be a lot of suitors for his production, but I think when you factor in and understanding and knowing how much he means to their team, and they're basically already telling Snead, you know what, go out and see what you can get. but they didn't do the same thing for Chris Jones because they feel like they need to find a way to get an extension done. I think it will happen. Both parties will be happy, and you better believe Chris Jones, 95, Stone Cold Jones, will continue to terrorize opposing quarterbacks when they're facing off against the Chiefs.
You know, it's funny, we're trying to match Chris Jones with a team as the matchmaker, but I almost feel like it's more of a decision for him. Like, are you trying to match with the team that will pay you the most? Because I think Kansas City's cap situation doesn't necessarily allow them to do that, or the team that gives you the best chance to win the Super Bowl, which is Kansas City. So I feel like that's more of the matchmaker at play here is, do you want to go get the bag, the biggest bag you can get at this point, given the success he's already had with the Chiefs, or do you want to try to get that three-peat with the Chiefs and another Super Bowl? That's what the matchmaker's going to come down to. Look, he'll get paid a ton in Kansas City, even if he stays, because he's that important, as B-Mac has pointed out. But I do think he's going to have to make one of those two choices.
More about money than love. Is that what we're saying?
We do live in South Florida.
Oh, come on. Man. All right, up next, we're going to pair our next guy, Danielle Hunter, lifelong Vikings pass rusher, 4-time Pro Bowler, fresh off a career-high 16.5 sacks. He is among the most accomplished defenders on track, really, to test the open market. So, B-Mac, who are you setting him up with?
One thing I know about, free agency, and when it comes to this mark in the season, we usually see a lot of in-division business taking place, right? Minnesota playing in the NFC North, potentially not being able to retain a guy like Danielle Hunter. Oh, by the way, you talked about his production, Jenny. Over the last four years, I mean, out of the 4 of the 5 last years, he's had around 10.5 sacks, and the production has been there, well documented. But I see Danielle Hunter leaving Minnesota and staying right within the division to the Detroit Lions. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Dan Campbell. When you talk about the team he's built on both sides of the football, I love their style of play. But adding a guy like Danielle Hunter would do wonders for their defense. A year ago, they had 41 sacks. 11.5 came from one player, Aiden Hutchinson. He's pretty much been a one-man band when it comes to putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks and sacking quarterbacks. Could you imagine Aiden Hutchinson on one side, Danielle Hunter on the other, with Aaron Glenn calling up exotic blitz packages? Good luck in trying to slow that duo of pass rushers down. So if they can get that done, they have a little bit of money to play with as well. This is a team that I believe will once again have championship aspirations when you talk about adding a guy like Danielle Hunter to the defensive unit.
You know, it's funny, when B-Mac started talking about division rival and all that, I thought, oh, it's got to be Chicago,
right? Chicago.
Yeah, because, I mean, look, you put him opposite of Montez Sweat, and they have plenty of cap space to be able to spend. We saw the uptick in the defense when they got Sweat. You add Danielle Hunter to this list, opposite of him, that would be quite the tandem. But I think B-Mac's on to something. You know, oftentimes in free agency, you get those teams who've had to go up against a guy twice a season, and they're like, oh, if we could just steal them away, so not only do we not have to face him, but now he's on our side of things, it makes a lot of sense. The Bears could be another fit as well.
I like that one, too. I like that one. All right, Christian Wilkins is our next bachelor, who, like Jenny, is proven, polished, and productive. The defensive tackle bet on himself, and it paid off last year. B-Mac, match him for us.
Once again, in-division business. We've seen this with these two teams before when you talk about the New England Patriots and the Miami Dolphins. Remember, New England scooped up Mike Gesicki a few years ago and added him to their team. I potentially see the same thing happen for the Patriots. And the thing about the Patriots, when you factor in where they're going as an organization, it's not a secret that they're changing the guard when it comes to what this Patriots team will look like moving forward without Bill Belichick as the head coach. But when you talk about having money to play with, this is an organization they're going to have to overspend for quality free agents. And that sounds good for a guy like Christian Wilkins, who will be able to try to get every dollar available. I love this matchup when you talk about defensively what they're going to continue to do with Gerard Mayo as the head coach, being a former defender. You look at his skill set, Christian Wilkins' skill set will transition nicely in their defense. And then you talk about a guy like Christian Barmore, who had a career year, the 3-year vet, 8.5 sacks. You pair him up with a guy like Christian Wilkins, who can give you 9 sacks, 35 pressures from what he did a year ago with the Miami Dolphins. This instantly improves the New England Patriots defensively. We understand about their issues on the offensive end, but if they can add a guy like Christian Wilkins, they improve dramatically, and they take one of the major pieces from their rival in the division away.
I like that move, B-Mac. Next up, we got Baker Mayfield. He signed a cheap 1-year deal trying to resurrect his career. Now, typically that doesn't work, but for Baker, it actually did. So, Brady, play matchmaker with Mayfield.
I think he wants to stay right there in Tampa, create a little more continuity at this point in time in his career. Now, he's not going to have the same play caller Dave Canales has gone to be the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, but he does get Mike Evans back, which is a huge piece when you have a #1 target like that to go along with the rest of the weapons that he's got on the outside. So I think for Baker Mayfield at this point in time, he had one of the best seasons, maybe the best season of his career this past season. Stay in Tampa Bay, continue to build from here. You won the division. See if you can't necessarily win it and take this team a little bit further into the playoffs. So for Baker, it's staying in the Sunshine State.
Okay. All right.
You want me to add baking up some love, don't you?
I saw you writing it. I thought you were going to add it. I saw you writing it down. I was like, oh, she's punny today. Baking up, what is he? What'd you put?
Love.
Baking up love.
Some buck in your love.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Mike Onwenu should be at the top of the list if your team is looking to improve on the offensive line. Brady, which team do you want him to land with?
Well, B-Mac's got a nice theme going right now, talking about those kind of division rivals.
Yeah.
So I've got Mike Onwenu, who's coming from New England, going to the New York Jets. This is a team that clearly needs help on the offensive line. A few really awesome things about Onwenu. The fact he's played all the positions. Now, they need more help at tackle. If you look at the roster, Becton's a free agent. Dwayne Brown's up there in age, and he's also a free agent, as well as Billy Turner, who they signed. So if you look at the pressure that all the quarterbacks sustained, obviously Aaron Rodgers to start the season, but even the rest as well, clearly it's a need for this team. He's the best, in my opinion, that's currently on the market. So makes a ton of sense for an offensive line that's had issues. And I think we all want to see Aaron Rodgers back there healthy and protected to see what he's capable of doing in the green.
All right, up next, we are going to be talking about Calvin Ridley. Not every relationship can be smooth sailing. We all know that for sure. A suspension for gambling kept him off the field in 2022. Add in a trade there. Ridley had his second best season in his 5-year career with the Jags last year. So, Brady, matchmaker, who do you like more?
I think the Carolina Panthers. Like, that's the team that I look at when I look at the roster and what took place last season. And everyone, including Pete Prisco, continuing to rail on Bryce Young and what he is as a quarterback. It's like, well, he didn't have a ton, to help with. And Calvin Ridley is going to be one of the better free agent wide receivers that's going to be on the market. So if you need a guy who can take the top off of defense, he can do it. He's got that speed and ability. Started off slow this past season, then started to get things going in the second half of the year. But if you pair him up with Adam Thielen, with some of the other pieces they have, they start to open up this offense to throw the football down the field more. You're going to see more production, a better Bryce Young, but give him some help. Calvin Ridley, to me at least, is one of those guys who can come in and make that sort of an impact on an offense, at least in Carolina, where I think it'd be a great fit.
And certainly with a young quarterback as well. I mean,
Young
he's
quarterback
got that experience.
and a head coach who's a play caller, Dave Canales, who I thought did a tremendous job with Baker Mayfield last year, playing to his strengths, playing to the strengths of the talent and personnel that they had. I think he'll do that in Carolina, too, helping out Ridley.
As you take a look at Ridley last season, I mean, with another young quarterback, right, Trevor Lawrence, and you look at the production that they were able to have in terms of the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, Leonard Williams, a one-time Pro Bowler, is going to turn 30 in June. Came to Seattle last October, started 10 games for the Seahawks. Now he's on the open market. Where do you have him going here, B-Mac?
I have him going right back to Seattle. It's hard for me to believe that Seattle would give up a 2024 second rounder and a 2025 fifth rounder for only 10 games. Right? That's not a smart business move if that's what you're going to do. So I think they're going to find a way to lock up number 99. John Snyder has already talked about how much he means to their defense moving forward. They didn't get a lot from him. It was only 10 games. It takes some time to kind of get acclimated to a whole new scheme. But we know what type of skill set he has. We know what type of potential he has, especially when he's more in tune to what they're doing defensively. So I don't think he's going to leave. Granted, there will be other suitors trying to land a guy like Leonard Williams. But I think for Seattle, knowing the resources that they gave up to get him, they probably would have to overpay just to make sure they keep him in a Seahawks uniform. Because when you give up a second rounder, and as I mentioned, a fifth rounder for only 10 games, that's not a good thing to do. So understanding the business and knowing how much he means to their defense, Leonard Williams will stay with the Seahawks.
Other suitors, I see what you did there. Going with the whole matchmaking theme. I love it. Brady Quinn, Bryant McFadden. We'll see how your matchmaking skills work out. All right, for more matchmaking, you got to check out the Pick Six podcast. Will Brinson and John Breach will play GM for the entire league, signing the best free agents, the teams that need them the most. Listen to wherever you take in your favorite pods.